Gosh, I'm going to echo Mark Twain's comment about being complimented. He said he was embarrassed when people complimented him. He felt they were not saying enough. Thank you, Lance, for the privilege to be of service and those kind words. My name is Ajit. You're a Mensa crowd. They say only people of high intelligence can pronounce foreign names easily. So the name is Indian. I hail from a very sparsely populated country called India. We're about only 1.7 billion people. But I've been here longer than I've been there. I moved to this country in 1974. So that makes me Indian American. Not American Indian. And then I recently, about 11 years ago, got married to my wife, my wife, who's Greek. And I thought that it would take 10 years to get going, and in a moment of passion I asked her, I said, where would you like to get married? And she said, my church. I said, oh, that'll take aeons, so maybe we can go with the universal thing. She said, oh, let's talk to my priest. He said, we'll put a little olive oil on you and we'll make you Greek Orthodox. So now I am Greek, Indian, American. So all these labels, right? I'm a grateful member of this fellowship, and I love the word fellowship because it means we're gathering here for one purpose, singularity of purpose, right? I read this and it says, we are all human until race separated us, religion disconnected us, wealth classified us, and politics divided us. But when we walk into the rooms of 12-step meetings, we come with one purpose only. We leave all the accoutrements of the ego outside, wealth, education, prosperity, property, whatever we have is left out the door, and we come with one purpose only. So in the words of Abraham Lincoln, who said, it's better to be quiet and be thought of as a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. So I am going to remove all doubt because I'm around other fools who find a way to find spiritual awakening by becoming addicted to alcohol or being involved with people who are addicted to substance, whatever that is. So first of all, do we have any people from Al-Anon in this room? So I greet you. Hello? Any members of Alcoholics Anonymous? I greet you. It's the Al-Anon. That's the A handshake, Al-Anon handshake. Are there any double winners in here? Well, you're schizophrenic, aren't you? You sit in a meeting and you nudge yourself. Say, oh, did you hear that? Did you hear that? I want to thank Stacy and Erica for being gracious hosts and picking me up at the airport, and their spouses, Drew and Corey, very, very generous in their hospitality. I'm really truly touched. I didn't expect this. I said, why are they bringing people out from other places for a one-evening meeting? But I'm so glad you do. This is special. I can feel the energy in the room. So I envy alcoholics in one sense because we were talking about this at dinner. You can say that you got sober on January 1 of 1990 or whatever, and each year you mark your thing. For Al-Anon, I can say this, thanks to the big book of Al-Anon, a sponsor and a God beyond my understanding, I haven't had an obsessive thought, and I've been totally detached since 1980. You don't buy that, do you? I asked my sponsor once, I said, when do you know you made it in Al-Anon? He said, when you're twice as good as your wife thinks you are and half as good as you think you are. So none of those have happened. So I keep coming back, and I've been coming back. And the years really don't matter, because if you hear my story, my feet were firmly planted in air for 17 years. I talked the talk, but I did not walk the walk. Arrogance and pride and ego were the gatekeepers to my spiritual awakening because everything was here. It was taking a long time to descend into the spirit. So I could sit there and talk about the steps. I could philosophize about the steps. I could conceptualize about the steps, but I wasn't working the steps. I thought I was, but I'm not going to tell you that something was going on drip by drip by drip. So how did I get to this wonderful thing called Al-Anon? I grew up in India, as I said, and I had no knowledge of anything called alcoholism. Now, despite the fact that we lost an uncle to this horrible disease, He died of cirrhosis of the liver, blind in both eyes, alone in a dark, dank room. His wife had literally thrown him out. She wasn't practicing detachment. She was practicing geographical distancing, out of sight, out of mind. And we did not see him as being a sick person. We saw him as morally decrepit, lacking in willpower and discipline. He knew he hung around the wrong people, lived in the wrong part of town, all that sort of stuff that goes with addictions, excessive smoking, gambling, drinking, the whole 9 yards. It wasn't until I got into my sixth, we call them standards, my headmaster, which is your vice principal here, I learned that he had started the first chapter of Alcoholics Anonymous in Bombay, India. And I asked a friend of mine, I said, what's Alcoholics Anonymous? He said, oh, they get drunks off the street and get them sober. I didn't know that at least in some fashion or form, AA would come to the rescue of my former wife, who, to my knowledge, has been sober since 1983. I know exactly, I can't remember when I walked into Alanon, late 1980, around September, October in Michigan. But I know to the moment when she walked into AA, May 25th, 1983, 8:02 p.m. in Irvine, California. All right, my eyes. My whole life for a long time has been externally focused. I suffer from an ailment called image management. I got to look good because you're judging me. I got to hang around the right type of people because you're judging me. Birds of a feather fly together. The mantra in my family was, what will they say? And I had no idea who these people were so obsessed with me, constantly monitoring what I was doing. Actually, it was all happening in my head. So my entire life for the longest time had been focused externally. There was no introspective work going on. It was all external. And I became a good judge of character. At 4 and 5 years old, I was asked to judge people. My uncles would stand me up and ask me to judge my aunt's friends that would come in. Do you think she's beautiful? Nah, she's got this problem. Do you think she's beautiful? No. She's at 4 and 5 years. That's, I think, child abuse. And I became very, very judgmental, not realizing that this was a sickness in itself. And it was, and I don't call my former wife my qualifier. I qualified for Al-Anon, I think, about 6 or 8 generations ago. It's all nature and nurture. And I can't blame my parents for something, because then I have to blame their parents, and they have to blame their parents, on and on till the beginning of time. So the defects of character that I discovered in Al-Anon were already existing. It did not, it's the soil that AA provided, that alcoholism provided, just brought them all to surface and brought them up, and I could see them and see what's going on. So anyway, I left India at the tender age of 22 in 1974. So if you're doing math mentally, how old I am, I'll tell you I'll be 73 this year. So pay attention to what I'm saying, trying to figure out how old I am. I'm just here. I was warned by friends and family that said, do not get involved with American women. And I said, why? They said, because they drink and smoke in the open, like men do. Translation, Indian women are discreet. They do it behind closed doors. I did not care for the American woman smoking, but I enjoyed the fact that she drank, because they said, liquor is quicker, candy is dandy, liquor is quicker. Made my progress in an evening extremely cost-effective and expedient. My God is a sense of humor, see? I needed to be right-sized because I grew up with a sense of entitlement. Why did I grow up with a sense of entitlement? Because my grandmother actually went on a pilgrimage to pray for her male son, son and male, what am I doing, redundancy, her son to have a male child. And lo and behold, much to their disappointment, I showed up. But I was treated rather well. I was relatively lighter of skin than my siblings. And so I was held differently in terms of how this whole color thing is also quite prevalent in that country. So I was treated specially. I was given a sense that I was entitled to things. And I didn't know this cognitively, but it was there in my cellular system that I deserved to get without trying for it because of who I am. And so I had the sense of entitlement. I'm growing up in this family, and all the stuff that's just getting in there that I'm not even recognizing cognitively what's going on. It's just happening. So I come to this country warned. I said, okay, and then I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to go to school, mind my own business, but God had other plans. Because, see, I had to be right-sized. I didn't know it. I was reading a book, and I won't mention because it's not conference approved, but it's about, this guy gave it to me, and I thought he was trying to proselytize. It was based on the Old Testament, but it turned out to be a book on depth psychology. It's about how God was tearing down these four individuals, their egocentricity, and bringing it down to size. And when I was reading this book, I realized that that's exactly what had happened to me over the years. And I had no idea why or how, but I was grateful for that it happened. Because I was arrogant, I was prideful, and I did not know that I was. I just know later on through my fourth step how damaging that was to me and to my relationships. So anyway, I'm at my university in the Detroit area. I was a part-time lecturer, and I was sitting in this place called it's called some traffic jam, it was called, with a couple of my students, and this woman comes to wait at our table, and my beam went off. I didn't even know I had a beam. You know, y'all don't carry a beam. Alcoholic, don't waste your time. Move on. Who? I need a hostage. Where is he or she? And she was working her way through nursing school as a waitress there, and her beam took off, said, here's a moron who's going to make my excuses, tell my lies, mend my damaged relationships, pay my bills, cover my debts, blah, blah, blah. So I asked her out, and she said yes, and my God came and gave me several signs, but I ignored them. Normally, when I went out with a woman, I listened with an open mind. In one ear, out the other. Because I'm strategizing. So some of the women are smiling because they've been around guys like me. But I was actually indulging in intellectual intercourse with this woman, having conversation and listening to what she was saying. And then we go to this party that my boss is having, and a guy walks up to me and he says, how long have you known this woman? You guys look so comfortable together. 7, 8 years? I normally don't proselytize from the podium, but if you're that comfortable with your date on the first night, one of you needs to leave. Because rocks in the head are fitting the holes in yours or the vice versa. So I look at him, I said, oh, it must be a past life thing, being from India, of course. So we started a date, and it was, I think, a Wednesday evening, if I recall, back in 1978, 79, somewhere around there. A knock on the door, and I opened it. It was 10 o'clock at night, and this woman standing with a lump on her head. And I said, what happened? She said, my mother struck me in an alcoholic rage. The knight in shining armor, the caretaker, the enabler, all came gushing forth, all these personalities. And I looked at her and said, you will not move in with that woman, you will move in with me. Now, a Hindu from Bombay, India, does not ask a Catholic Polish woman to move in with him. Now, her mother was a devout Catholic who disavowed sinful alliances like living together. And I look outside, and the mother was helping her daughter move in with me. That would have been a red flag just flashing. Run, run, run. So she moved in. We had 15 minutes of ecstasy, I suppose. I don't know. And then came the noise. The doors were banging and the howling in the bedroom. I'm not even there. And I'm image conscious. I'm running around. Keep it down. What will they say? What will they say? And say, who do you think you are? Prince Charles, you stuffed shirt? And she shout even louder. So, oh my God, I don't know what's going on here. So finally we decided to do the right thing. Got married, of course. You're putting your hands in. You do the same thing, right? Get married, everything will be over. Operation successful, patient died peacefully. So you go into this little condo we purchased in a town called Warren, Michigan. If you're from Warren, Michigan, be grateful you're here. I wasn't in denial, guys. I was clueless. Because I'm self-absorbed. I don't care about you much, except when I need you. Other than that, you don't matter that much. That's how I used to be. I'm not that way anymore, thank God. And I didn't know that a half bathroom was her bar. It wasn't until my family had come in. My brother was here, and I lost my father, so my mom came to the States. And I wanted them to meet my wife. And so as we got in the car, I could smell something, and I was not happy. And we got into a fight, and she said, I'm not going with you. And she slammed the door and walked in. For some reason, I followed her. And I saw her going into this bathroom. And she saw me coming. She's trying to shut the door to the cabinet. And I saw 1 big gallon jug of wine. And it's like time stopped still. And a voice said, your wife's alcoholic, your wife's alcoholic, your wife's alcoholic. And I'm looking at her, and the next thought that came to my head was, I'll take care of it. Because, see, I'd been watching a television commercial. And in that, the guy looks at his wife, and the wife says, darling, you have a drinking problem. He says, sweetheart, you're so right. It was a Schick Shadle commercial for aversion therapy. So I thought, this is brilliant. I mean, I've got to believe in the Robert Patman Act, truth in advertising. I was very gullible. And I walked up to my wife. I said, sweetheart, you have a drinking problem. She said, you're an idiot. I don't. By the way, is anyone here living with someone who's actively alcoholic? Thank God. Okay. So I figured that if I catch her in the act, then I'll know she has a drinking problem. So if you have a lot of time on your hands and not much of a life, you can choose to do what I did. I used to sit on the couch facing a television that wasn't on. The light was on, but no pictures, so I could see the reflection of what's going on in the kitchen. And I'm pretending to do the crossword puzzle, so I'm being discreet. What's a 5-letter word for boredom? Some of you are experiencing it now. Ennui, 10-letter. E-N-N-O. Aha! She's pouring booze. What a waste of time in life, my God. And she rushes off to the bedroom. I'm moving the bottles around, thinking that I know, that she has a drinking problem because she can't find the booze where she stashed it. Friends of mine who happen to be in age said, Ajit, we hide our bottles in 19,000 places. We don't have to look for them. Don't struggle. I was the one who was almost arrested for molesting my vacuum cleaner because I was looking for a bottle in the bag, just pouncing it like. Hoover has been sending me love notes ever since. I'm not going to go through a lot of how it was. I'm going to get to the program, what happened. We tried every trick in the book. We threw each other out, anger, complaint, promises. I won't drink, I won't drink, I won't. And understanding ourselves, we want to believe every time there's a sober period. I had this myopic view of my wife, and I must tell you, this woman became a very good parent when we have kids. She was an excellent cook. She was a great artist. But I was fixated on this alcohol thing. And that's so myopic of me at the time. And I didn't realize that I was so focused on that one little wart instead of... It's like I had this fixation. If I went with a woman on a date, and if she happened to have a piece of lettuce caught in her teeth, she disappeared and the head of lettuce showed up. That's my obsessive behavior, right? And I'm just staring at this thing. Oh my God, I'm looking at a head of lettuce. And so all that I'm looking at the alcoholic, and I can't see anything else because I'm so angry. I remember we used to go out to dinner with friends, and they would say, Ajit, what's your problem? I said, what's my problem? I said, she's got pepperoni on her chin, she's got mozzarella on her eyebrows, and you're telling me she's having a great time. And she was. Alcoholics have a shirt that says, I drink, I get drunk, I pass out, no problem. This idiot has to get up and check the garbage can to see what she's been drinking and then critique her choice of alcohol. What a snob. Kmart champagne, how gauche. Red wine with a screw top, it wasn't even a cork. She didn't let it breathe, oh my God. And I walked up to and I look, really as an Alanon, pre-Alanon, I was the moron, not she. I walked up to my sponsor and said, Don, I've become a garbologist. And sponsors come from one-upmanship school. He said, that's nothing. I said, what do you mean that's nothing? He said, oh, I used to have a flashlight in my mouth, and I used to work on jeeps in the war in the middle of the night, so in the dark I would do that. It came in handy. I could go through 2 garbage cans in the dark. And I looked at him, I said, have you ever heard of Granger Industrial Supply? They sell miners' helmets with a flashlight. Be kind to yourself, wear that so you can see what's going on. I just want to tell you how insane it was. Finally, I said, I'm done. I'm leaving. Back, we don't have any assets, just this little house and no kids. Pack up my bag. As I'm walking out, she comes up to me. She said, if you leave, I will commit suicide. I do not want to diminish suicide. Lost a very dear friend who happened to be a sponsor to suicide. But at that time, I was so angry. I looked at her and said, that I want to watch so you don't botch it up. And foolishly, I followed her from the door to the kitchen, which was about 15, 20 feet, not realizing that she had changed her mind from suicide to homicide. So she's about that distance there at the kitchen, and I'm here, and there's a television set behind me, and I've got knives, dishes, and sundry tools coming at me with alarming velocity and accuracy. And I'm dodging them because I don't want to run outside, because if I run outside, what will the neighbors say? Which brings me to the point, why do alcoholics get anonymous after they get sober? If you anonymously, problem solved, drink anonymously, I can sleep peacefully, because what will they say? It wasn't until Ann Landis came to my rescue. Said, if your child or mother or father or whatever of alcoholics, go to Al-Anon. By the way, Ann Landis has had a significant impact on the growth of Al-Anon. I don't know if you guys knew that. So I decided to try Al-Anon. I went to this one meeting in Warren, Michigan. It was downstairs in a church. It was as brightly lit as this, but what I saw was darkness. 6 women. And the oldest one, I thought they were from the Ice Age, because one of them had a pet dinosaur. I'm teasing. No, okay. I mean, I felt, like, what am I doing here? And I looked at this kahuna and I said, what do I do? She said, did not even get up to greet me. She said, go to that table. There's a literature table. Pick up a pamphlet. It's called 12 Steps. I said, hey, that's easy. 12 steps. I'll be done. I'll know what to do. So walk up, and there's an escape clause, I thought, at the top that said, these steps are taken from Alcoholics Anonymous. We changed one word in the 12th step. We changed it to others. So I said, admitted we were powerless over alcohol, my life. I said, I'm not powerless over alcohol. My life isn't unmanageable. Denial, not knowing that I was in denial. Came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I said, I'm the sane one. She's the insane one. Sane people don't go around promoting suicide or contemplating homicide. I actually thought of killing my wife. But being from the land of Gandhi, I decided to go on fasting. I'll tease it. I mean, how could you even contemplate killing someone because they have a drinking problem? Step 3, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. I said, why give to God that He's given to me? Move on. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory. I was perfect. Move on. Step 5, are you kidding me? Against image management. If I have something to tell you, I'm not going to tell you. Move on. 6 and 7, I glossed over. Today they are the underpinnings of my program. 7, the word humble stumbled me. Actually, I was so humble, I was proud of it. Move on. 8, if people have harmed, they deserved it. 9, what amends? When is she going to make amends to me, for God's sake? On and on and on. 3.5 minutes, I was spiritually awakened. I looked at the woman and said, now what? She said, keep coming back. I said, why? She said, and I repeat this, it's so etched in my memory, because you're sick. Oh my God, she said it with such emphasis. I thought she may have been psychic, but she was right. But I was caught up in what you call the orthodoxy of the program. Instead of the orthopraxy, I was reading the steps. I was told to read literature. I was doing literature studies. I got stuck in the concept of disease. How can it be a disease? It's got to be something with willpower. Then they said, well, if she had cancer or diabetes, would you leave her? And my mind breaks up into two conflicting sides. And one says, if she's got diabetes, why isn't she seeking insulin therapy? If she's got cancer, why not chemotherapy? No one really explained the concept of disease to me at the time. Today, if you ask me, is alcoholism a disease, I'll plead ignorance and apathy. I don't know and I don't care, because the moment I keep focusing on the disease of alcoholism, I'm not focusing on me. So I go to my meeting, and I was transferred to Chicago. I went to Schaumburg. I'm not suggesting you do this at your meetings, but I brought up the word disease in my Al-Anon meeting there, and they said, if you want to understand the disease of alcoholism, read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's on the literature table in this meeting. They had taken a group conscience to have the big book of AA there. They asked me to read the first 164 pages, and it hit me that alcoholism is a disease that transcends physiological and psychological and other forms of sickness. It goes beyond that. Say, big minds like Jung and Silkwood were not able to put their arms around it. Who am I to try and grasp this disease? It's totally unimaginable how I used to watch my wife. She would walk up the stairs, fall down, break her ribs, and repeat it like it's never happened. One time I had a moment of compassion. I was walking by the bedroom. She was holding her nose and drinking scotch because she hated scotch. She liked vodka. And I knew that there must be something so powerful that caused her to do this, that I could not stop it, and she had no power to stop it. Something had to intervene to control this and end it. So then I still wasn't doing anything, and I then moved to California, and I got caught up in the lure of the program, so to speak, the luster. I was asked to speak at meetings because I could put two sentences together. I was asked to lead meetings. I was asked to sponsor people. They're in therapy now. I was caught up in the noise. I was so caught up in the noise. I wasn't working the steps. I was kind of stabbing at them. But God had a plan. And 8 years into her sobriety, my wife, we had 3 kids by now. And my wife came up to me and said, things have happened to me in my childhood by the hands of my father, a priest, and an uncle. And our relationship is going to change. So in the next few years, whatever intimacy we had started to dissipate to the point we were sleeping in separate bedrooms. And finally, she got up one day and she said, this marriage is over. And all the stuff that was shoved inside, even though I wanted the bloody divorce because we had no relationship, we had 4 kids by now, excuse me, I got really upset, and then I went to see a divorce therapist. And she looked at me and she said, don't get involved with women, period. For a year. I said, forget women, I'm going to move into a monastery, I'm going to be a monk, or something like that to get away. She said, no, if you get involved, you'll get hit by 2x4. But see, I have a very funny God, right? I used to go to my Friday night meeting, and there was a woman in there that was, in my eyes, a vision of beauty. I had a crush on her, but I was married and I wasn't going to do anything. But after I broke up with my wife, it was July 4th, 1996. August of 1996, I walk into the meeting. The only chair available is next to this woman. And I've read a few books on body language. And if a woman's sitting next to you and twirling her hair and her shoes coming off, she's shaking her leg, she just might be interested unless there's another guy next to her. In this case, there was another woman next to her, so I was okay. So I caught on the clues and I asked her out, threw caution to the wind. And this woman and I got into a relationship that gave me everything that was lacking in my marriage at the time. And as had been predicted by the therapist, 8 months into our relationship, I got a 2x4 across my head. A guillotine came and cut my head off. I was so beaten up. I wanted to kill myself, but I didn't have the guts. I walked up to my sponsor. I said, Dean, do you have a gun? And he said, why? I said, I'm too much of a coward to kill myself. I'm in a lot of pain. My marriage had been dying over a period of time. This was just... Instead, he said, why don't you lock yourself up for 3 days and work on your fourth step? Now, I'd done my fourth step through Blueprint of Progress, 4-column things and all that. So I said, where do I go, Dean? He said, go Courage to Change. Page 345, there are 4 questions that you need to answer. The first question was, who am I? No idea. And I'm writing this rage coming out of my dad for not playing cricket with me, for my siblings and my mother and everyone, just anger, anger, anger. Second question was, what are your values? I said, I went to 12 years of Catholic school, for God's sake, honesty, fidelity, blah, blah, blah. I never adhered to any of those. He said, no, we're going to change that in your case. You're a talker, not a doer. He didn't say it that way, but I knew what he was saying. What do you value and how do you show it? Do you value Al-Anon? How do you show it? Do you value your children? How do you show it? Do you value your relationships? Each one, how do you show it? Next question was, what do you want to keep for yourself in terms of your traits of character? And what traits of character do you wish to get rid of? This is 3 days. 1997, Thanksgiving, I'm locked up, TV off, and we had a little thing called pages. For the young ones, you don't know what that is. They were little boxes, and the numbers would show up, and you go to a payphone, and you call that number. Payphone. It's a dial thing. Anyway, and that's when my feet firmly hit the ground, and I heard Darth Vader's voice that said, welcome to the dark side. Every defect and trait of character I had denied in myself was there on paper. See, I rationalized. I don't judge. I make observations. I'm not sarcastic. I have a acerbic wit. $10 BS. I'm not impatient. I have a sense of urgency. But there it was. You're insecure. You are a victim. You've been a victim all this time and you didn't even know it, for God's sake. And the victim was right there. I'm not telling you that I developed gossamer wings and took off and became Mr. Al-Anon and became the saint of Al-Anon. None of that. I became more human. I found myself to be more compassionate of you because I saw the flaws in me. I did not need to judge you because what I saw in you, if you spot it, you got it type of thing. I can spot arrogance in a room like that. So I'm doing this. Meanwhile, I want to take my wife to court and prove to the world that she's psychotic, neurotic, insane, and cannot have a home or kids. My sponsor, Dean, taught me, step 1 is what's the problem? Identify the problem, because the problem is not what I think it is. Alcoholism has never been my problem. My problem has been obsession with behavior, because it went from alcohol to food to shopping to whatever was going on. And in the book, Chuck C's book, he describes it beautifully about a guy. He's talking to his sponsor and he says, I'm afraid of dogs. He said, why are you afraid of dogs? He says, because I was bitten by one. He said, why were you bitten by a dog? He says, because I was running. He said, why were you running? He said, I was chasing a girl. See, your problem is not dogs, it's women. So you got to come down to the core of what's your problem, right? And he says, step 2 is what are your options? Because the more I get stuck in the problem, the bigger it grows. I'm taking a shower, a white tile, and I see a little ant stuck on it. And my mind goes, what kind of chemical is coming out of that ant that makes it stick to the wall? I'm throwing water, but it won't fall. And the ant's getting larger and larger, and the tile is disappearing. Because I'm moving in the direction of my dominant thought, which is obsessing with stuff. I didn't recognize this. So he shows up on my shoulder while I'm sitting across from his attorney. He said, so what's the problem? I said, I don't want to lose my kids. How do you know you're going to lose your kids? So you got to have facts behind your decisions, right? I said, every woman who gets divorced wants all the money she can get. So I presume that's what my wife wants. He said, have you asked her? So I walk out to call my wife. I said, I won't take you to court on one condition. She said, what's that? I said, I don't want to lose the kids. She said, you're an idiot. We have 4. I don't want them to myself. My divorce that was going to cost me thousands of dollars cost me $700 because we mediated. And today, then we co-parented. And today I have a wonderful relationship with my kids. So much so my daughter asked me to come babysit my grandkids, 4 years and 2 years old, by myself. They were going out to dinner, and she said, I want to warn you about one thing. I said, what? She said, after they take a bath, they like to run around naked for about 10 minutes. I said, what? She said, yeah, that's that. 4-year-old boy and 2-year-old girl get on their trikes and run around naked for about 10 minutes. What a joy. I said, had I taken my former wife to court and made a mess of it, I would not have had the relationship that I have with my kids today, all 4 of them. So it's come a long way. So I did my 4th step. I walked up to my sponsor. I did my 5th. 6 and 7, I was stuck. Each step I've been stuck because I've been stuck in form. I'm not powerless. I struggled with the concept of powerlessness for the longest bloody time, so I focused on unmanageability. 5 areas of my life: spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, and social. Am I in balance? If I'm out of balance. But now I recognize what powerlessness is. It's become slowly coming to a place where power that I have, I don't like cliche, oh, it's illusion or whatever nonsense that is. For me, that's nonsense. I just look at it, I'm powerless because all the power that I have is ego-driven power. But I do have power. I do something called a 2-way prayer. I don't know if you've heard of it. You write with your dominant hand a question, and you ask your higher power to respond, and you use your less dominant hand. And the less dominant hand I'm writing, it says, your power is you have the power to love, you have the power to discern, you have the power over your attitude. You don't have the power to control people. You don't have the power to dictate what others do or not do. And I said, wow, very clear that I do have power and I do not have power. That's the dichotomy of the whole thing. And so I read of a Franciscan monk, and we were talking about him. Step 6, I was stuck because they said, you find what your payoffs are. And I struggled over that. It was a pseudo-intellectual exercise for me. So I sort of stopped, and my God has always revealed stuff to me at the right time. And I'm reading this guy's book in the steps, and he says, in step 6, you stop and God takes over. And I thought, wow, that makes total sense. And 7 is the step of, in 6 you become, the 3 A's, you become aware. So if I'm experiencing, I don't say I am jealous or I said I'm experiencing, I give some space to my trait of character so it can be removed a little more easily. So I become aware, then I get into a state of acceptance without challenging it. And I say acceptance according to our book says admitting the existence of a reality, whatever that reality is. But there's a liminal space, a threshold that takes me into the peaceful place called surrender. So it's awareness, acceptance. The action is step 7, is humbly ask God to remove it. And my sponsor said the word remove, I don't know where he got this in what dictionary, does not mean eliminate or extinguish because the trait of character will show up again. So he said remove is simply moving someplace else. So I'm very grateful to the sponsors I've had who walked me through these steps. Step 8 was a challenge, making a list, until I came across this. It said there are 2 types of guilt, real guilt and neurotic guilt. For real guilt, there's no restitution. It gives an example of an elephant and an ant that meet in a circus and decide to get married. The night they consummate the marriage, the elephant dies. And the ant wakes up in the morning, looks heavenward and said, oh my God, for one night of pleasure, I have to spend a lifetime burying it. No restitution. Step 9 allows me to make restitution by changing my behavior or making a compensation for something I've taken that is owed to you. And most of the time, the amends are to myself because I've not lived up to my own value system. Step 10 for me is an ongoing thing. Every night, and I will tell on myself, I was watching Oprah one time, I don't know why. And she said, gratitude, every night, think of 5 different unique things of that day for which you are grateful. It's a struggle sometimes. So at night when I go to bed, I think of 5 different things for which I'm grateful. If I've been selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, manipulative anywhere, if I've been sarcasm was my big thing. I used to kill my wife with sarcasm. I thought I was being smart because tearing it down, until I read in my One Day at a Time, the word sarcasm comes from the Greek word sarkazo, which is to tear flesh. I was indulging in cannibalism of the worst kind, tearing someone's spirit down. I practice my step 11 on a regular basis, do my meditation and prayer. And then, of course, the 12th step is carrying the message, not the mess, and being of service. And I'm very grateful when I'm asked to be of service. So it's been a long time in the coming. I attend several meetings. So I treat my program as a discipline. What I mean by that is there are 3 tools, 3 things to it. 1, at meetings. 2, step work. And 3, being of service. If I'm doing all those 3 things, bit by bit by bit, things are changing in me, and I see some growth in myself, and I'm grateful for it. And it's the book I use for my step book these days is Reaching for Personal Freedom. If you haven't looked at it, you might enjoy reading it. I work a step and a corresponding tradition and a corresponding concept. And it's amazing the questions apply to you personally, not necessarily to the program. And I've been very, very grateful to receive this. So I'm going to end it on this. I hear people say that I go to meetings and I get things by osmosis. If you're one of those lucky people who can get that, that's fine. I'm the kind of guy, if I stand in the garage for 10 years, I'm not going to become a car unless they shove a radiator down my nose and a transmission up my you-know-what. And even then I won't be a car. So the story goes like this. It's about a guy who's at a banquet. He sits at the table and he sees everyone eating and laughing and having a grand old time. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes go by. No one's waiting at his table. Now he's upset. He stands up and looks and he realizes that he's at a buffet. He's got to get off his duff and do the footwork to get fed, just like I do have to get off my duff and do my step work and do my service work and do my meetings. So thank you again for asking me to be of service today, and I appreciate it. Thank you.